lot of folks on here, and I want to make sure I don't miss you. Let's see. Thank you for everyone that came out to our MLK Day of Service on Monday of last week. Oh, hi, Joy. That was a great event. We had a bunch of food delivered and partnered with RBG Dems, and we're able to I think, efficiently and pretty well give out a bunch of food to folks. So thank you to everyone that came out. It was a great time. And Danielle wisely has put the link to pay your dues in the chat. So everyone do that so that you can vote in our endorsement. Perfect. And speaking of voting, just so everyone knows, the executive board did vote to adopt the same voting procedure that we used in 2021, which is that OPA vote ranked choice voting program. You may remember doing.
Tyler, you're muted.
Tyler, you muted yourself, I think.
You're muted, Tyler.
That was a freak occurrence. That was Havana syndrome, I think. Okay, so I'm back. As I was saying, we're planning to use the same voting software that we used in 2021. So we will, just like last time, we'll send out a test link to everyone who is eligible to vote in the endorsement vote. And we'll make sure that you're able to access the test voting. And if anyone has any questions, please do feel free to reach out to us, because we actually didn't really have any problems with it last year, but it required a decent amount of hand-holding is not the right word, but assistance, technical assistance, and that's totally fine. We're happy to do it. We don't want anyone to feel like they are intimidated or confused by the software. So that's the main thing. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? Any kind of the housekeeping logistics stuff before we launch into the remainder of the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, Art.
Yeah, Tyler. So does that mean you will come on this? This will come on the screen, because I'm sitting looking at the screen now with the people. So is this going to come on our screen now, or do we have to do something to bring it on the screen?
No. Yeah. So good clarification. So do you mean the OPA vote, like the voting mechanism? So what that'll be. First of all, that won't be until next week. So the first of our endorsement.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And what we'll do is, just like last time, we'll email everyone a link to the voting software. So you'll get an email in your inbox. You'll click the link, which is why it's very important that we have your correct email. So please do everything you can to make sure that we have that, and we'll send out a test email beforehand. And if you don't receive that email, please do let us know. So what should we say, Alyssa? If they don't get an email by Thursday, we haven't really talked about this. Can we send a test email by Thursday, Friday?
Yes, it's on my list to get. Yeah, the sample ballot. So that by test email, I think you're talking about the sample ballot that will make sure to email out to everyone so people can get used to what the ballot looks like and practice voting. And then once you have that sample ballot, that means you're eligible to vote, and you'll be receiving your official ballot the night of the 27th. So I think probably early next week is when those sample ballots will go out.
Oh, early next week. Okay, I didn't want to pin you down for that, but and just to clarify,
Why not?
you will only get you'll get the test ballot if you're eligible to vote, but you'll only get the real ballot if you attend the Zoom meeting. We're not just going to blanket send it out to everyone on our list. You need to sort of check into the Zoom meeting and be present during the voting period to be sent a ballot, in an effort to stimulate as much as possible, kind of being in the room and attending the meeting. Art, that was a very good clarification. And anyone else have any questions about any of that stuff? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I guess let's launch into the nomination of IND officers. To be nominated as an IND officer, you have to have been a member for 2 years and be a member in good standing. I am currently serving as president and have been for much of the past 12 months. I'm not going to be able to do it next year just because of we got another kid due in a few weeks and sort of by a thread status as it is here. So I am do you have a question? Okay, I think you guys got your hand up. Anyways, I would like to open up the nominations for IND president by nominating our current corresponding secretary, Alyssa Meyer, who I think would do a great job in the role. But I suppose that editorializing is unnecessary. Do we need does anyone know, do we need a second at this stage of the nomination process? Okay, we do. We do. All right, got a lot of seconds. Awesome, thanks. Are there any other nominations for IND president? All right. Hearing none, I would like to open up the nomination for IND first vice president. Do I hear any nominations? Jason, looks like you have your hand up.
Yes, I had a very long speech prepared, but now you said you didn't want to editorialize. I guess I'll follow your lead. I will just say, I think Danielle Zuckerman has done above and beyond for the club over the last couple of years. I nominate her for first vice president.
Second.
I'll circulate the speech if anybody wants to read it.
Oh, good.
Did you really prepare something? Now I feel bad.
No, not at all.
Okay. I mean, look, Alyssa's done great too. I didn't want to overdo it, I guess. Okay, great. Noted. Danielle Zuckerman nomination. Any other nominations for first vice president?
Call the question.
Right. All right. Any, I'm going to open up the nominations for second vice president. Yeah, Art. Or
I nominate Hal Friedman.
Hal Friedman. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Beautiful. I also think Hal's done great, and so I will. I'll say that as well. Thank you, Art. Any other nominations for second vice president? Perfect. Okay, hearing none. Do I hear any nominations for treasurer, IND treasurer?
I would like to nominate Joseph Coletti.
Beautiful. Current treasurer Jesse Capel nominates Joe Coletti. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, perfect. Any other nominations for IND treasurer? Well, I will say I think Joe would do a great job. I think Jesse has done a great job as well. So thank you, Jesse, for all you've done. We got another few weeks to roll through here. We'll run through the tape or whatever they say. Okay, do I hear any nominations? Or sorry, did I already say any other nominations for treasurer? Okay, hearing none. I'd like to open it up for nominations for the corresponding secretary. Do I hear any nominations for corresponding secretary? Yeah, Danielle?
I'd like to nominate Vicky Eastis.
Awesome. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, beautiful. Any other nominations for corresponding secretary? And I'll just reiterate, I believe that our outgoing corresponding secretary has done a great job. Alyssa Meyer, thank you for all your work in this role. And last, but of course not least, do I hear any nominations for recording secretary? Yeah, Joan?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Lynn Hill.
Lynn Hill, excellent. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Awesome, thank you. Any other nominations for recording secretary? Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Hearing none, I guess we'll close up the IND officer nominations. congratulations to everyone that was nominated, and we will vote on the IND officers at the February meeting. So it won't be next week. We'll vote on it at the February meeting per our constitution. So now I'd like to move into the executive board nominations. The executive board meets monthly on usually the first Thursday of the month. Requirements for membership are a member in good standing, having been a member for at least a year. And it's a lot of good people that try to make IND run. And sometimes we do, sometimes we do our best. So I think this is going to be a little bit quicker because I know that this is not a single position, but rather, there's 10 to 20 people that are able to serve in this role. So I'm just going to open it up and somebody will tell me if we miss anybody. Seamus, I saw you had your hand up first.
I'd like to nominate Steve Bronstein.
Steve Bronstein, do I hear a second?
Second.
Perfect. Art, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm nominating Greg Monty.
Greg Monty, do I hear a second?
Second.
Perfect. Lynn, I see you have your hand up.
I nominate Joan Millman.
Joan Millman, I've heard very good things. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone else have any nominations?
I nominate Helen Pearlstein.
Helen Pearlstein, awesome. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Art. Speaking of Art, I nominate Art Levy.
Second.
Second. Awesome. Anybody else have any nominations?
Yes,
Yeah.
Melinda Rasco. I nominate Emmanuel Amoroso.
Perfect. Emmanuel, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nominations?
I
First
nominate
popcorn.
I nominate Karen Johnson.
Thank you, Hal. Any second?
Second.
I'll second. All right, Karen, I think you have your hand up.
I nominate Hal Friedman.
Hal Friedman, excellent. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Point of order. Hal was
Hal
already
Hal is
nominated.
already.
He's
nominated.
already an
yeah.
officer.
Oh, that's a fair point. I guess you've been stripped.
Yes,
You've been
that's
stripped,
right.
Hal. Bad luck. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's good. That's actually good clarification. You don't need to be.
Okay. Jesus.
All right. I will nominate Melinda Rasco. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any other? Jason, I see you have your hand up.
How about my friend Nancy Shu?
Nancy Shu, do I hear a second?
Second.
Awesome. And Alyssa, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, can you nominate multiple people or at once? Or is that, okay. I'd like to welcome some new members to the e-board, Dan Abramson, Dara Adams, and Lou DiMeglio.
All right. Do I hear a second, a triple second, if you will?
Triple second.
All right. Perfect. Perfect. Anybody else have any nominations?
Yes.
Welcome. First of all, welcome to those new folks. Thank you for considering your nomination. Joanne?
Yeah, I hit an app button by mistake. Sorry. I want to make sure that I have everybody down here because maybe I'll do a couple.
Sure.
Julia, Emily Sachs.
Yeah.
She
Do
did.
I hear a second?
Second.
Perfect.
Jason Shelley.
Second.
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 Upton.
Okay. Seamus Campbell.
Second.
Second.
I'll go through the list I have. Helen Pearlstein.
She's already nominated.
Second. She's
Nominated.
double nominated.
Nominated. Okay, see, I missed her. That's why I was wondering. Okay.
That's perfect.
And
That's all
somebody
right.
nominated Jesse Capel, yes?
No, Jesse
No, I think
Capel.
we got to do it.
Okay.
Second.
I second.
Second.
And Art, I wanted to make sure Art was nominated.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you for checking. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry, just going through my list.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. So there's a few more hands up. Lynn, do you have another nomination? That's fair.
You have to
Okay.
take your hand down, Lynn. There you go.
That's fine. So to everyone that is still considering or waits to see what are these weirdos all about, you can also be nominated for e-board at the February meeting, not for an officer position, but for just serving on the executive board. So if you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence and you'd like to be considered, please reach out to us. I mean, I remember being somewhat intimidated and kind of weirded out by the idea when I started, but I gave it a shot, and it's a cool thing to do. And if you're on the fence, I would encourage you to think about it. Great. So I think with that, nominations for this evening are closed unless anyone would like to add one more of any kind. Great.
Can you just say all of the names that we have?
Yes, I can, as a matter of fact. Nominees: President Alyssa Meyer, First Vice President Danielle Zuckerman, Second Vice President Hal Friedman, Treasurer Joe Coletti, Corresponding Secretary Vicky Eastis, Recording Secretary Lynn Hill, and then nominated E-Board members: Art Levy, Jesse Capel, Helen Perlstein, Joan Millman, Julia Elma Sachs, Melinda Rasco, Steve Bronstein, Seamus Campbell, Jason Shelley, Karen Johnson, Nancy Shu, Greg Monty, Dara Adams, Dan Abramson, Louis DeMeglio, and Emmanuel Amoroso. I myself get shoehorned in sort of without formal nomination as the ex-president. I don't think I missed anybody, but let me know if I did. Great. Well, I think so. With that, we're all done with nominations for tonight. Which thank you very much to everyone who participated and for being willing to serve. So, like I said, we do have a few candidates who are planning to speak with us tonight. But I think before we get into that, I wanted to make sure we had space for our electeds that are already present to give any kind of an update. So Joanne, do you want to give us a quick Albany update or anything else that's going on? You may be on mute.
It's okay. I didn't say anything very brilliant, so it was okay.
That's been my whole
so
meeting.
I just got back literally. This week was taken up with a couple of bills that I think are important. One is that we passed a bill that would allow people to vote by absentee ballot, essentially codifying the executive order that allowed people who were concerned about the transmissibility of COVID and fearful of going to the polls to be able to vote by absentee ballot. It isn't as broad as we would have liked on the ballot proposal that was shot down, but we did do that. We had quite a bit of, as you might imagine, a debate with the other side of the aisle, reminding us every 5 seconds that that ballot proposal was voted down, and complaining about people, why they're living in fear. Blah, blah. Anyway, so but it passed by a healthy margin, and we also passed once again the Rape is Rape bill, which would change the rape laws so that what is currently forcible sexual contact would be included under rape, and that goes to things that are without penetration, that is anal or oral contact, being charged as rape as opposed to as forcible sexual contact. So we've passed that bill many, many times in the Assembly. I don't know whether Joan ever did, but I think we've passed it like 10 times. So you might have voted on it once upon a time. And now it's going to move to the Senate. But that was about, it was about an hour and a half of debate. And we had about 3 hours of debate on the absentee voting. So that took up the whole day yesterday. But we're moving along. We did pass a lot of chapter amendments, which, as you know, are bills that passed. The governor signed them, but the executive had a tweak or two to them. And with that change, would sign the original bill. And so there are a number of chapter amendments that are coming down the pike. I have 2 of them myself. And one is a bill that Senator Kavanaugh has, for example, that, affects Mitchell Lamas locally. And we've talked about that. So, but there are a lot of chapter amendments to pass, and we're taking care of them pretty quickly. And so that's what we did this week. And I think we'll be passing a lot of chapter amendments next week. We did just get the budget. As you know, the governor made a budget address. There is a lot of money in there for a number of things that we've all advocated for. There's additional money. So we're not only making the CFE good on the 1.4 billion that was due on foundation aid this year, but you also increased that. There's money for the environment, not as much as I think people want. And there isn't some things that I think we needed, which is, if we had gotten a cost of living for home care workers for the last 20 years, they would now be making a livable wage. We're not there yet. She just proposed a cost of living increase. And we're going to be fighting for more money for those folks. So that's just a brief rundown. We're learning more about the budget every day. We just got the budget bills, so we'll be reviewing those and be briefed on those next week. And we'll have a little more specificity on that at our next meeting. So I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you. A lot of stuff going on. Yeah, a few things. Never a dull moment. And for folks that are just joining, I'm just going to do a quick reminder. We're going to do IND's endorsement voting will take place on January 27th and February 17th. We split it up because there's actually a lot of races this year. More than I would have expected. I'm surprised every time I look at it. But in order to vote in those endorsement meetings, you do have to have paid your dues and be a member in good standing, which means basically you have paid your dues and you've attended at least 2 meetings before the endorsement meeting. So that's we want to try to make sure nobody's surprised when we get to the meeting and they're like, oh, what the heck, I paid and I'm not counted here. So please reach out to us if you're at all unsure. And we'll try to make sure that you are on our list of folks that are able to vote in the endorsement meeting. If you don't receive a, what we call it, a sample ballot, if you don't receive a sample ballot by Wednesday of this coming week, so I guess 6 days from now, please reach out to us because we're going to send a test ballot out to everyone who we have on our list as an eligible voter. For the endorsement meeting. So if you don't get one, please do let us know. We may have your email incorrect, or we may have not received your dues payment. Excellent. So I think we have a few minutes before our featured candidates of the evening arrive. So does anyone have any questions or comments about anything we've covered so far? We have a few minutes where we may be able to address some of that stuff. Yeah, Alyssa?
If we're looking to fill a little bit of time, just curious if there is any update on the lines that anyone closer to the situation can provide for us. It's a big question for everyone.
Yeah, that's a great question. Anybody have district line intel? Kind of affects our petitioning efforts and a lot of other stuff.
No, we sent the rejection to the Independent Redistricting Commission, and they have 15 days after the receipt, and we only voted on this last week, so it's not even 15 days yet, to give us proposed new lines if they in fact can come to agreement on a set of lines. And then we will know at that time what we need to do, and that's that. So we don't have any intel on that, and they don't tell us in advance like what those lines are going to be. They might have some conversations with leadership at some point, but I think the whole point of the Independent Redistricting Commission is that they don't have those conversations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, Joan. Joan, do you have a question?
No, I have comments. Yes. We don't
Hi,
know
Ella.
yet, but hi, Ella. We don't know yet, but I've been told, and it's something that Joanne and her colleagues in both houses will vote on soon, that there will be a bill presented which will shorten the petitioning period from 6 weeks to 4 weeks. Instead of petitioning beginning on March 1st, it will begin on March 15th. Primary will still be June 28th, and there will be less signatures required for each one of the offices, whether it's Congress or Assembly, Senate, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't know those numbers yet, and I don't think And Joanne, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you've seen such a bill yet.
No, we haven't had a bill. There's certainly a rumor to that effect, in part because of COVID and where it's hitting around the state kind of thing. But we don't have a bill to do that. That was an accusation leveled at us when we were doing the absentee ballot legislation this week, that, well, next you're going to come back to shorten the period, blah, 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 which actually advantages a lot of upstate Republicans. So, but I do suspect that may be the case, but we have not seen a bill like that yet.
Thank you.
So much. It's going to be fascinating to see how that all plays out, and I'm kind of ducking out right before my esteemed colleagues in IND have to figure out all the petition stuff. So thank you in advance to IND folks for checking that out.
We can't hear you there.
Your mic is going in and out, Tyler.
How's that? Is that any better?
That's better.
How interesting. Thank you for letting me know. So I believe have Nydia Velasquez's campaign people on. Miss Congresswoman Velasquez, are you here on the call now? If you are, you're welcome to jump in.
I am.
Welcome, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'd be happy to hear from you how you're doing, and then if you have a few moments for us to take a few questions, please take it away. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you so much to everyone, but especially to the members of IND and Tyler for the great work that you're doing, Danielle, John Millman, Joshua. Everyone, all the members, especially is so fitting to be talking to you after the experience that we went through last night in the Senate. And it gives us a reason as to why we need to continue to organize, we need to continue to be engaged and to make sure that we all fight for the values of this country, but more importantly, to protect our democracy. So I want to thank IND for the work that you do throughout so many years, making sure that we educate our communities and that you represent the voices of many people that otherwise might not be able to be represented in the political process of this country. So thank you all. As you may know, some of you, I've been battling COVID again. So my energy level at this hour is kind of low. And so please forgive me. But it's an honor to come before you, and it's an honor to have received your support throughout so many years. I would like to start by asking you to think for a moment as to the state of affairs of the country a year ago. 11 million people were receiving unemployment benefits, and less than 1% of the population was vaccinated. They were vaccinated. Today, the unemployment rate has dropped to 3.9%, and nearly 70% of the population is fully vaccinated. And I am proud of the work of the Biden administration working with us to come up with solutions and comprehensive relief assistance to the states and the city to combat COVID-19. And in fact, today, New York State has a surplus because of the resources that have come down from the federal government. Throughout the pandemic, I was proud, and I am proud of the the fact that I led the way to provide resources and relief to businesses and nonprofits across the country, and proud to have negotiated the $1 trillion Paycheck Protection Program, and how I fought the Trump administration in terms of providing access to that relief assistance to communities that didn't matter how hard they tried, they were shut out of the process, meaning women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. And I also advocated for the inclusion of non-for-profits and cooperatives into PPP because they didn't have any other source of assistance. I also championed listening to restaurants across the nation, a $28 billion grant program for restaurants. And I also was supportive of an extension to provide relief rental assistance to people across the country. And I also fought to establish for the first time a $16 billion for museums and many theaters and actors, and $360 billion in lending authority for the COVID economic disaster loan program. And that was a long-term loan program, 3.7 interest rate at 30 years long-term to help businesses in our country. And because of that, we saved millions of dollars. But coming to our district and to the many challenges that we face in New York, one area that is very important to me is climate change. And despite the fact that we are in the midst of this pandemic, we cannot overlook the emergency and the urgency of this moment in terms of addressing climate change. Especially in my district, we live in an environmental justice community where decades of systemic racism and bad policies have left communities of color more vulnerable to the consequences of pollution and climate change. And as you know, I fought hard to get the Newtown Creek and the Gowanus Canal designated as Superfund, and not only to expedite resources to clean them up safely and reduce the harm to local communities, but going forward to make sure that we do not compromise the health of those waterways. And also very important is the fact that for so many years, Democrats and Republicans alike, presidents in the administration spoke about the fact that infrastructure was a nonpartisan issue. Obama failed in enacting any legislation. Donald Trump, when he came in, he said it's a matter of weeks or months, and that is the one legislation that we're going to do, because when it comes to infrastructure, there's no Republican or Democratic issue, and he failed. President Joe Biden was able to work in a bipartisan fashion and enacted a $1.2 trillion infrastructure law. And I am working very hard to set up a meeting with Governor Hochul to discuss how we move forward with more sustainable projects for the district. So I sent a letter to her in December with top priorities for the New York 7th district, including the rehabilitation and improving the BQE, making our subways accessible to all, and increasing the resiliency and protection of our coastal areas here in Brooklyn. The infrastructure fund is a huge victory for our country. And I'm working to make sure that working families in New York reap the benefits of that legislation. As you know, one of my top priorities in Congress has been fighting to reverse the unacceptable decades of federal, city, and state disinvestment in public housing. In fact, my Public Housing Emergency Response Act formed the foundation for the Build Back Better plan's investment in public housing. So I call for an investment of $70 billion. The Build Back Better included a $70 billion for the Housing Capital Fund. And I was able also to work with the chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee to make sure that we made a critical alteration to HUD's distribution formula to ensure that NYCHA gets its fair share of the investment and will have the money to eliminate its entire capital repair backlog. As you know, we haven't passed the Build Back Better. People are talking about passing pieces of that legislation, but I can assure you one thing, that I will fight for this funding by any avenue possible, whether through the Build Back Better, appropriation, or a standalone bill. I am not giving up on that, on that promise and that commitment.
Great, thank you so much, Congresswoman Velasquez. Do you have time for one or two questions?
Yes, but I just would like to say one thing, that
Oh, sure.
I have a dual role that is very important for me personally, and that is also to advocate for the people of Puerto Rico, the 3.5 million American citizens in Puerto Rico. And today, the president signed into law my bill that provides transparency to the public debt restructuring that is taking place right now as we speak, making sure that the interests of the people of Puerto Rico are not compromised by global law firms that are providing advice to the board that is in charge of the restructuring of the public debt of Puerto Rico. And with that, I thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. And just before I take questions, I realized I didn't have my wits about me when this started. So if you'll permit me 10 seconds to introduce the Congresswoman. Most people know, but Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez represents New York's 7th Congressional District, first elected in 1992 and became the first Puerto Rican woman elected to Congress. And she serves as the chairwoman of the House Small Business Committee. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think she needs no introduction, but I wanted to at least give you one. So thank you so much for coming. Joanne, I think you have your hand up.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the Congresswoman for all of her support for public housing and for NYCHA in particular, and for your leadership in the structure of providing that kind of support for public housing. I know we don't really know where things are with Build Back Better, and you'll keep fighting. I would like to ask that when we're getting close, if we know, we have to deal with the state budget, right? And so the issue of funding for NYCHA, and, we have started putting state money into NYCHA. It's not anywhere near enough, as you know, and we can't outdo the federal government, but it's helpful to know that. And then the other thing I wanted to thank you again for your leadership on climate justice, but also ask as to the likelihood of canceling student debt. Do you have any sense of where that might be?
No, really. I think that right now we have to make a decision as to what we are going to do, if we are going to do anything regarding the Build Back Better. This is a bill that really divided our Democratic caucus, and we have a lot of money, including for education, childcare, hospitals, and many other things. So we are putting a lot of pressure on the president, but we also recognize the political reality that we need 51 votes in the Senate. And these are areas where Joe Manchin has been quite clear. So those are the issues that we need to deal with. And right now it's going to make the Biden agenda more difficult if we don't have the collaboration of these two Democrats in the Senate.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think we have time for just two more quick questions. Let's go Karen and then Joan. Thank you.
Congresswoman, hello.
Hi, Karen. How are you, dear?
That's great. You know, as chairwoman of the House Committee on Small Business and the first Latino ever to do so, I'm so proud of you. You're dedicated to entrepreneurship. You're dedicated to small business. You know, as we look at what COVID has done to small businesses across your district and throughout Brooklyn, I'm just curious, you know, as chairwoman, what do you think going forward we can do to help the small entrepreneurs, the small businesses?
Well, look, let me provide some figures regarding the PPP program, the EIDL, and the restaurant relief program that we passed. In my district, we got $4.4 billion in PPP, and that money, those loans, will turn into grants if those businesses kept their employees on payroll. And we have the EIDL program, that is a long-term lending program at 3.7% interest rate, long-term 30 years. We got $2.4 billion. On the shorter venues, we have in my district 116 million. Restaurants got $568 million in grants. This is money that they will not have to pay back. What I did, especially for the smallest of the small businesses, was to demand a set aside of $60 billion that were provided to CDFI and mission-based lenders. Those lenders that are based in our own communities. And because of that, we were able to put money into the hands of those vulnerable communities and those very small businesses who tried to get PPP, and it didn't matter how hard they tried, they were left behind. So the numbers improved dramatically once we implemented the reforms where we prioritized in the second tranche of money that we put out there, the smallest of the small businesses. Right now, we don't know if there is, if we're going to do any other type of relief assistance for small businesses. It will be quite difficult.
Awesome. Joan, I think you had your hand up, and then that'll be our last question. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's not a question, Congresswoman, it's just a statement. I just wanted to thank you. I can't imagine how difficult it is being in Washington and having to deal with so many of the people on the other side and how irresponsible they are and so many of the issues that are so important to us. And just to let you know that time again and again, the people that you represent are so thankful that you do represent us. And you do it so well, and you've been doing it consistently. So on behalf of myself and anybody that I've talked to, we never have to worry about where you're going to be because you're always on the right side of the things that we care most about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I could be in Washington doing my job and having peace of mind because I know that you are on the ground doing the organizing, and that is important.
Thank you.
Well, Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you continue to recover.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. So our next speaker this evening, as we continue to speak with candidates in the 2022 election, is candidate for New York State Senate District 26, Assemblywoman Yuh-Line Niou. Since 2016, Assemblywoman New has represented New York's 65th Assembly District, which includes Manhattan's Lower East Side, Chinatown, the Financial District, and Battery Park City. Assemblywoman New chairs the Subcommittee on Catastrophic Natural Disasters and co-chairs the Asian Pacific American Task Force. Assemblywoman New, welcome to IND. Thank you so much for joining us.
I think actually one of my biggest things that I'm doing.
Hey, Larry, you gotta mute. Thank you.
I was like about to start beatboxing. So I just wanted to say that it was really an honor to be here. And one of the other things that I actually just finished was actually the people's budget for our caucus. So you probably had saw some of that. Folks who probably want to check that out. It's a very powerful document. We released it before the governor released her document to make sure that a lot of our communities of color would be able to have a voice in the budget process and be able to make sure that, you know, we put our values up front and, you know, made sure that folks could see that. And so feel free to DM me later or to chat with me to make sure that you can see that. But again, first I wanted to thank everybody for having me here tonight. It's an incredible honor. I love my colleague Joanne and I love listening to Nidia. So that was really nice to be able to hear everyone. And I really appreciate all of your hard work as we work together through these really difficult times. And I know that with this new surge that a lot of folks here are doing a lot of mutual aid and helping out. So I just really appreciate that. Just to introduce myself a little bit more, since, you know, I've never actually spoken at this club before, so I'm really excited about it. My name is Yulene, and I have served at the State Assembly for Lower Manhattan since 2017. I grew up like many immigrant kids with my parents seeking educational and job opportunities. When we first moved here and immigrated here, we went to the wonderful land of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. So they were like, let's pick the most racist place on earth and put us there. And, you know, that was really fun. My parents moved us around to many different states. So I grew up seeing a lot of different communities and the different ways that governments worked. And actually, when I was in elementary school, I was in El Paso, Texas. And I kid you not, I got to see the first woman governor of Texas, Ann Richards. When I was a kid, I was actually a Richards reader at the time. And she came to our school. And that was when I met Ann Richards. And that was the first time that my mind like kind of exploded. And I was like, wow, women could actually be governor. And it was kind of amazing to see. And I think from very early on, I really knew that I wanted to dedicate my life to public service, but I also didn't think that I had a lot of say in how things worked, right? I always thought that rules and laws and things like kind of happened to us. And I realized then that when I took on an internship for the very first time in Washington State, that actually there were a lot of people who were in power that didn't want some of us to know that we could change things if we wanted to. And clubs like this one really makes it so that we can have impact, right? People start getting very involved, very young. And I think that it's really important that we continue to always have a voice. And I discovered that we can make that impact in our communities. And I, at my core, am an organizer, a coalition builder, and I believe in really linking people together and making sure that we have access and transparency in government. And I also realized when I was an intern at that moment that, wow, you know, my job probably as an advocate should be making sure that people understand that there is no big myth and no big secret to accessing government, right? It's really about making sure that people break that down and understand that, you know, we can access government as long as we want to. And so when I was first running for office in 2016, I saw that my district did not have somebody who would be able to represent them in a way that I felt like they deserved to be represented. And I wanted to fight for change. I wanted to fight for representation. And I wanted to see in a historic district like Lower Manhattan's that, you know, we wanted that progressive change, that strong progressive change, and we needed a representative who could really bring our community together. And during this pandemic, we saw how interconnected we all really are. Right? My healthcare depends on your healthcare depends on my healthcare. The things that we want are vastly connected. You know, we saw the housing affordability crisis worsening. We saw the worsening climate crisis. And we saw that, you know, there was no time to waste really into building a better and more sustainable New York for our working families. And during the height of this pandemic, you know, I gave a budget speech. I know that folks probably saw it or read it, but I saw that, you know, our federal government wasn't actually standing up for us or putting out the resources that we needed. I saw that our state government wasn't doing that, no matter how hard I fought for it. And I saw that our city government wasn't doing it. And it was actually our neighbors and our communities that were actually fighting for one another and standing up for one another. And we saw the huge glaring inequities in our government, in our aging infrastructure, our overcrowding at hospitals, our unequal access to resources, to PPE, to life-saving vaccines. And we saw that our communities were inequitable in how they were treated. And I think that, you know, together we have to take advantage of this moment and turn it into a generational call to action. And I think that it should be something that changes the course of our state's history. I mean, I think that we have that power. It's just a lot of people, again, you know, don't want us to know that we have that power. And I think that we have that power. We can make that change, and it'll take more than a legislator to do it. I think that it'll take many people who are advocates, right? And I think that it'll take us being on the ground every single day. And I'm running today for the same reason that I launched my first campaign in 2016, because I see people hurting, because I see actions not being taken by our governments. And I've also seen that, you know, we need an advocate, a vocal advocate right now. And I think that, you know, I've demonstrated that I can build the community coalitions necessary to pass laws, because it takes all of us to help our working families and to drive those long overdue changes that we desperately need in Albany. I fought and delivered for my constituents when no one wanted to listen. My office processed nearly 1,000 emergency unemployment claims and addressed over 500 housing cases during this pandemic. I fought and won a record, but not enough, $550 million in NYCHA capital improvements. We need our federal dollars. We all heard what we were fighting for with our federal dollars coming from NEDIA, but when I got elected, I started to work really hard to making sure that we finally got some state dollars into our public housing. And we finally got $100 million after my letter was written. And then we finally got $250 million. And then now finally we have $550 million for NYCHA capital improvements for our aging public housing. And of course, you know, I also, you know, continue to fight. And we had almost gotten to a conversation where we were able to almost get a $5 billion promise from the state for $1 billion every single year. But you know, COVID happened and then things changed in our budget, but it's a conversation that the speaker did promise to continue to have. And you know, I didn't cave to obviously private interests and trying to privatize our public housing. I think that we have to continue to fight against RAD and Blueprint, because I think that it's really important that we keep our Section 9 housing and our public housing, because some of these plans would effectively end public housing as we know it. I think that we need more public housing, not less. I didn't accept the status quo or the "it's always been done this way" excuse when it came to voting for our budgets. And I stood up against Cuomo. And I called out corruption when everyone else stayed silent. And I stood shoulder to shoulder with our taxi drivers for a fight for their survival and for all of our working families. I went on a 15-day hunger strike and we won. Today, I stand shoulder to shoulder with all of you to make sure that we thrive in our community now. And we know that our communities were the hardest hit during this pandemic, and I don't need to tell you that. But even as our state leaders are talking about getting back to normal, we ignore that, you know, without serious climate policy, without investment in our social services and our education system, without, you know, making sure that all of our communities are protected and that we're not, you know, increasing gentrification, we'll be heading out of a public health crisis and walking right into an environmental and infrastructure crisis. And the working families of the 26th district will bear the brunt of that unpreparedness if we don't course correct now. And so the state Senate, I believe, has the power to change the state for the better. And that takes the courage to ruffle some feathers in Albany, And if it means delivering the critical services and reform that we need for our working families by making a couple of people upset, I'm down for it. And as a senator, I know that you automatically get to chair a committee. It gives you the power to make fundamental transformative change in our policymaking practices. And everybody knows that in Albany, the staffing dollars for the assembly are very different from the Senate side. I think it's really important to note. And I think that this change is what we need now. It's not Band-Aid reform time or years of delay time. And we all deserve better, more inclusive, equitable, and livable New York right now. And it's one that we can have as long as we decide to access that. And it's not, it's not an excuse making moment, I think. I think it's a pivotal change moment. And I think that as your senator, I will try to make it so that that moment is had. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you have time for one or two questions?
I have time for as many questions as you want to give me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Hal, it looks like you have your hand up. And anybody, if you've got a question, and I don't see your hand, please let me know. Go ahead, Hal.
Yeah, you're running against incumbent Senator Brian Kavanaugh.
Correct.
So my question is, what is it about Senator Kavanaugh's record that is so objectionable or unsatisfying to you that you feel the need to run against him? Why are you running?
So, I mean, people will always ask why, and why now, why not in 4 years or 8 years, or why not wait your turn? And I'm running today for the same reason that I launched my first campaign, because I see that this is necessary. And when I ran a public accountability and anti-corruption campaign to replace Sheldon Silver in the 65th, a lot of people told me that it wasn't the time, and that there was an incumbent, and that I was being disruptive, and that the system rewards people who play the game. And I don't give into that. I think that it's really important to make sure that we have good representation that will make sure that that we actually have something that will make and help all of our communities be able to have good representation. And I will just say that there were a lot of votes that we took differently, Brian and I actually supported Brian for many, many years. And I was actually probably, if I will be very frank, like if I wanted to be able to run for Senate. I could have tried it during the special election back in the day, but I think that it's really important right now in this pivotal moment to be brave. And I think that there were a lot of moments where I didn't see Brian step up, and I didn't see my senator, because I'm also represented by him, stand up the way that I wanted him to. And there were a lot of different moments where I feel like, I took the hard route, the vote that I wanted to take, and I tried to talk about it to other members as well. And I think that, there were a lot of moments, including, giving Cuomo his emergency powers, or, for a budget that cut education funding and social services and healthcare during a pandemic, right? And I think that, there are all these different moments that I think are really, really critical.
Thank you. Thank you. Alyssa, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I have a Brooklyn specific question, but first I just want to call out, I think there's some gendered nature in a couple of the questions and comments. I don't think we would really ask a male candidate if they were running against the incumbent Brian Kavanaugh, who we know and love. I think we should be reminded of the rules of decorum, and the assembly member deserves the same fair shot that we give Brian every election cycle. So my question is actually Brooklyn specific, because I know you're a Manhattanite, which is cool and all, but we know that this is the better borough. So can you just speak to how you would view Brooklyn specific issues if you were to get this role?
Sure. I think that, every single time that you are representing folks, it's really about listening and really understanding where everybody's coming from at all points in time, right? I think that, when I first moved here in my college years, it was really, my grad school years, it was really, about learning about the different neighborhoods that I lived in at that point. I lived in Harlem, and then I moved down here into Lower Manhattan with my partner when, we decided to move in together. But it was just like one of those one of those moments where, you know, you learn your community. But I always worked in Chinatown. I was a bartender. I don't know if people knew that, but I was a bartender in Chinatown at a dive bar, a karaoke bar called Winnie's, if you guys all want to go karaoke with me. But it is one of those, you know, things where I think it's really about listening and learning the issues that everybody's going through. And, you know, we have so many things that we have in common. We have a very diverse district as well here in Lower Manhattan. We have a lot of displacement. We have a lot of different things that, you know, we share. We share the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge. You know, we share a lot of the different, you know, transportation issues. We share a lot of different housing issues. We have public housing in both of the sides of the district. And I think that it's really important that we are talking about all these things. You know, there's a lot of displacement happening in Brooklyn right now. I think that it's really, you know, really key that we talk about, you know, the homelessness issue. We talk about, you know, what it is like to actually have, you know, somebody who understands certain things from a certain lens. It's really desperately needed for somebody who's really, really strong on housing, for example, and to really be able to make sure that we have, you know, all of the discussions that we're having. You know, I've been a big pusher of the good cause eviction bill for a very, very long time with my roommate, aka your neighbor, Julia Salazar. And so, you know, it's been really a big fight. You know, folks probably know my bill, which is kind of like the skeletal structure of ERAP, which was the quote unquote cancel rent bill, right? I think that there's a lot of things that I push for that really cause for a lot of the conversations that make it so that we have better legislation, you know, and I think that it's really important that we have big ideas instead of ones that fit into a box.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions for Assemblywoman Yulian New? Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this delightful Zoom call. And
thanks for having me.
Welcome. Well, thanks. The first time at IND, we appreciate it.
Yes, I'm excited. So hit me up with any questions. Every single one of my constituents in my district has my cell phone number, so everybody here can have it as well if you want it.
All right, perfect. Thanks. We'll see if we can get any drink recipes from Winnie's.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to give you the secrets, but there's one drink that is like their very famous Hawaiian punch.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. Maybe we can bring it next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Great. Sorry. Awesome. Well, I think we have a few minutes before our next guest, Congresswoman Clark, I believe, is planning to join us at 8:15. So I would be happy to entertain any points or questions anyone has about the logistics of the next few weeks. I know there's kind of a lot going on. Additionally, if anybody has any community events or notices you would like to make the club aware of, this is a pretty good forum. A lot of politically involved folks on the line.
Well, if I could say, I will be having a Java with Joanne again soon. I don't think we finalized the date, but you know, we'll let everybody know, of course.
Okay, perfect. I've attended those in the past, and they are exactly what they sound like, and they are delightful. So I see a question from Irene Van Slyke in the chat. When does petitioning start? I think that's still somewhat unknown. I think, and Joan or Joanne, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it might be March 1st, it might be later, but it's not 100% certain. Is that correct?
Right. It's technically March 1st, according to the political calendar, but there is a possibility that there will be a legislative change to that and push it back by 2 weeks. But we don't have a bill on that, and we don't know that we're doing that. So right now we're going with March 1st.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. So I mean that's something that we will definitely need to be doing as well. If you have never considered running for county committee before, that's another thing you can do. If you live within the 52nd, you can be a member of county committee, and that involves crucially letting us know that you're interested and living in whatever the 52nd becomes. The timing's a little funny because we don't know. Not only do we not know the election district lines, we don't even know the assembly lines yet. But once we know that, if you live within one of those districts, we would love to have you run for county committee with us. Steve, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, just two quick things. I was going to mention county committee and how important it is for members of our club to be part of county committee. Again, it's not the most exalted position in the world, but it can have a major effect on local groups and local representation. The other thing is this: I just want to let everybody know, because of Tyler's leadership, we made a generous contribution to the families in the Bronx who perished, family members who perished, and families who lost their home in that horrific fire. And I have to say, I'm very proud of that. Very proud of that, and we can continue not just serving our community, but New York community as a whole. That's all.
Yeah, thank you for flagging that. That is a very good point. And I don't think that was my idea, but I definitely supported it. As everyone knows, that was absolutely awful, and I'm glad we were able to contribute a little bit.
Just two other things.
Sure, go ahead.
It was my idea, and I just can't believe how freaking gray my beard is when I look at the Zoom. It's driving me crazy.
Well, you had a birthday recently, I believe, a milestone birthday. So maybe
that's absolutely correct. But
It-
you know, what can I tell you? I'm now a senior citizen.
it happens like that, man.
Right.
That's what they tell me anyway.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I believe so. Petitioning will be in the new district. Yes. So petitioning is subject to the new district lines. So the shifting sands we're dancing on here you require flexibility from everybody. So I believe we have we do have a few minutes right now, and I believe our Senator Kavanaugh is here. Senator Kavanaugh, do you have time for a quick Albany update? What are the goings on have been? I don't know if you're
Sure.
still. Oh yes, hi there. Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to, and I assume you'll give me the hook when, since I'm a little filler here, but it is great to be with all of you tonight. A few updates. First of all, a personal update. Some of you may have heard I had COVID. As of New Year's Day, I was officially out of quarantine and isolation as of the 13th. It kind of hung on for a long time. It wasn't too serious, but I am very happy to be out and about again. A couple updates. We began the legislative session this year as chair of the Housing Committee, along with my colleague, Senator Hoylman, who chairs the Judiciary Committee, with a hearing on the good cause eviction bill. It's the first hearing that's been held specifically on that bill, although it also was the subject of the 6 or 7 hearings that I held in 2019 around the rent laws and other issues dealing with evictions and landlord-tenant issues. It's the bill. It was a very robust hearing. We had 41 people testify in person. There's also lots of written testimony that was submitted. All of the testimony is posted. The video of the thing is posted. It's about 8 hours, so you might want to pick your spots. But it really was a very good way to start the conversation. It's a very important issue, and really would be a very major transformation of the rights of tenants throughout the state. We also, it's become a bit of a tradition in the Senate to begin the year with election reform. So in 2019, when we first took the majority, we passed this enormous package of bills. There were really 8 huge changes in the election law. Actually, 7 of those bills had been my bills in the assembly, so I was very proud that day and debated the LLC loophole bill closer that day. But we've now done that the first day each time. This year we did a package that really focused on the absentee ballot process. We've all become quite aware of the significance of those as a way of voting, and because of COVID. And we did a lot of bills to make sure that the counting process is quick and accurate, to make sure people have access, to make sure they can track their ballots, to make sure there are drop-off boxes as a core part of the process. We also passed a bill of mine in that package, which would move up the deadline to register to vote to 10 days before the election. That is significant because the voters in November, after a fierce advocacy campaign from some very conservative people, voted down our bill, which is again something I originally sponsored in the Assembly and we passed in the Senate on 2019. That would have made same-day registration possible. So the Constitution says the registration has to be 10 days before Election Day and no closer. But now that we have early voting, we would, if we pass this bill, have registration during the first 2 days of early voting, so people could register and vote on the very same day. If we pass this, we passed it last year in the Senate as well, but the Assembly didn't take it up. We're hoping, and Bobby Carroll in the Assembly has now picked it up. We've done a lot of work in election reform over many years. We also, the budget is upon us. It's out there. I've talked to you a lot about the capital budget and the new 5-year capital plan that is due. We will be working to make sure that is a very robust, investment in housing we need. And also particularly that it focuses on public housing, which I know Nydia spoke about earlier. We are hoping for very big dollars from the federal government, but the state, of course, needs to do its part, which is something I've advocated for many years in the state. I was proud to see the governor adopted a all-electric building provision. It doesn't go into effect nearly as quickly as the bill that I think I've talked to you about before. That would be a statewide all-electric building bill. So we're going to be negotiating that. There's very good increases in environmental funding, including a 33% increase in the Environmental Protection Fund. So lots to discuss there. We're continuing our implementation of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity settlement, which began last year with historic increases in spending on schools. So lots of good work. The budget will be due about 70 days from now. So it's going to be the usual negotiation, hard negotiation, but hopefully we'll get a better outcome. We are in a good shape fiscally because of the significant progressive tax increases we did last year. So we should have a lot of opportunity. Just the eviction moratorium that I wrote and sponsored 3 times expired this past Saturday. I think you could have made a case that you can make a case that the public health situation would warrant continuing it, but there was not a consensus in Albany to do that. The good news is that the Emergency Rental Assistance Program is now accepting applications again. The executive had closed that program in October. I was scathingly critical of that decision. I think I called it catastrophically bad decision in the newspapers, but it's reopened. The significance of that is we still have to fight for money for that program, and we need federal money, and I'm also committed to finding state money if necessary to cover all the rental needs. But upon applying for the program, you are protected from eviction, and that is language that I wrote into the statute that we passed last year. So that is the primary defense against eviction right now, and it's a very significant, robust protection that mirrors the language of the eviction moratorium. We also, I've mentioned this here before, but the Housing Assistance Fund is also now accepting applications for $540 million for homeowners. We have to look, I am looking at the question of how to make sure foreclosures and tax lien sales and other things don't happen in the meantime, and do expect there'll be some legislation around that that'll be forthcoming soon. I think I'll stop there. Happy to take questions if you have time for them, or if you want to jump on to the next speaker.
I think there was, yeah, thank you so much. I think there was one question from Irene Van Slyke. Can you talk about the Environmental Protection Fund? Do you have any comment on that? I don't know enough about it.
So the Environmental Protection Fund is a fund that we put aside every year in the budget. It's been $300 million for as long as I can remember. The governor's proposed to up that number to $400 million. It funds a very wide range of services and projects around the state, including land conservation, clean water projects, including urban, programs in our city. It's not just about, rural areas and forests. So it's a great source of wide-ranging funding, and it's a very good news that the governor is proposing this big increase, partly because of a significant infusion of funds from real estate transfer taxes, which fund that. We're going to fight to keep that in, maybe expand it even further. In a related note, there's a lot of money. The governor's also proposing in a separate fund a lot of money for clean water infrastructure, which is a very important issue here in the city and around the state as well. So there's a lot of good work going on in the environmental space.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you have time for one or two more questions, we are just waiting. There's a few more congressional candidates, or I guess 2 more congressional candidates that are scheduled to speak very soon. But I do want to make sure we have. They're not quite ready yet, so don't feel bad if you're.
I'm happy to be filling.
Don't feel bad. Yeah, you're not taking up anyone's time. Seamus, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Senator, for always showing up to IND, making the trek even virtually from Manhattan. So I actually work at City College New York, and today there was a town hall with the president of the college, and he was talking about how there is actually a push within the administrators of CUNY to create a vaccine mandate across the board for all faculty, staff, students. And there is basically the consensus or understanding by the college presidents is that it has to be done by the legislature. Do you know if there's any sort of ongoing legislation? And if so, is that something you would be supporting?
Good question. I don't believe that, there are, 10,000 bills pending, and it's possible somebody's introduced one recently. I don't believe I've seen a bill that would require that. I would like to take a look at it. If it were something that I think it's important that the legislature not get too involved in the administration of the colleges, but if the colleges were requesting that because they needed our authority to do that, I think, I would certainly be, I would be supportive of that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Suzanne, I see you have a question.
Yes. Hi, good evening, Senator. I have a question, a follow-up that's come up in the area about the emergency rental assistance protections. So if somebody applies for ERAP right now that the application period is reopened, how long does that protect them from evictions? Is that like for the foreseeable future? That has come up a couple of times. And then the follow-up is, I've seen that the Legal Aid Society or Legal Services has posted that the state may be able to apply for federal funding in the spring again, which I guess would go into the ERAP program. And just if you have any information on that, that would be great.
Yeah,
great
sure.
to know.
So the answer to the first question is, as long as your application is pending, you are protected. Obviously, if it's pending for the next 7 years because we never get money, that might wear thin. But for now, it is, the application, the thing says, as long as your application is pending, you're protected until, unless you're rejected from the program, unless you're found ineligible. The process by which the money is reallocated, there were two separate federal allocations initially, and then two reallocations. The first reallocation supposedly happened, but generated a very little bit of money, only $27 million. The next reallocation is supposed to happen after March 31st. I am advocating very strongly for the federal government to stop shortchanging New York by using that mechanism, which was provided for in the great statute that was passed by Nydia Velázquez and others, that allows the state to reallocate money, allows the federal government to reallocate money based on need, as demonstrated by the number of renters, the high rent burden, and in New York by the fact that we have now given out our money at a much more rapid clip than basically any other state. The federal government is sitting on many billions of dollars, and they should make that available as soon as possible. And the statute says after March 31st, we should be pushing for some understanding of how that process is going to work, and that it will generate a large amount for New York. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Kavanaugh, for joining us.
Really a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm going to gently request that people mute. I have a mute patrol person. Seamus, would you mind muting? There we go. Thank you. I think we're still working on it. All right. So I think we are still waiting for a few minutes for our congressional candidates to join us. So thank you very much in advance for your patience. Has anybody thought at all about what redistricting might mean for your particular neighborhood? Is anybody on a line? I myself am on a assembly line. I don't know which assembly district I'm going to be in. Alyssa, did you have a question or a note?
No, just wanted to respond to the redistricting question because we are in the few blocks of Prospect Heights that's still the 52nd district, and I'm sure the maps that will ultimately be passed are not the same as what was shown, but it shows that they would give more to Prospect Heights in the 52nd. So I'm hoping that stays because Prospect Heights is a really cool part of the district. That's my own personal concern. that I would love to stay in the 52nd district. We did buy this apartment because it was in the 52nd district and not one that we were looking at that was just outside of it. So, you know, I am loyal through and through. Any
Very
other
good.
concerns with being cut out of the district, folks?
Yeah, I have a concern too. I'm in Park Slope, and according to the prospective redistricting, I'm put in the 44th. I really would like to remain in the 52nd. I'd like hope that Park Slope remains in the 52nd. As of now, I don't think it is. So hopefully someone will take this into consideration and keep me in the 52nd. I want to petition for the 52nd AD's candidates.
Yeah, Hal, if you're
Thank you,
petitioning
Hal and
for that,
Alyssa.
that's a crucial blow to our petitioning totals. If you bump over to the 44th, that's gonna,
Do something about it. Help.
yeah.
I have a kind of
Awesome.
philosophical question. As many of you know, I live in the 50th. It's IND's worst kept secret. But you know, a couple of the proposed maps have split up the 50th, and the 50th is like Greenpoint, Williamsburg, that kind of area. And there are some people who are really opposed to having the district split. And my thought is that if you have more elected officials representing your neighborhood, doesn't that elevate, you know, the concerns in your neighborhood? I'm curious what people think about that quandary.
That's the debate, right? Is if you have a united community of interest with one representative or touching a piece of several others. I don't know if I have a definite answer.
I think the issue of community of interest can vary depending on a variety of criteria. The biggest problem that the 50th has, as well as the 52nd and the 57th, is that we all have way too many people. We're so over the average we have to lose. So I have to shrink. And so in my mind, you know, there are some aspects of what has been proposed that are okay, and other parts that's what's been proposed is not okay in terms of my own personal preference. But, you know, it is a tough thing to do so that people who are represent neighborhoods east, for example, of the 50th, the 57th, and the 52nd are going to have to come west and pick up new voters because they're undersubscribed. So the 44th is like down about 7,000 people. I'm 14,000 over, or 15, right, over. So I have to, you know, I have to shrink. Others have to grow. I would say most of the districts in Brooklyn are either right at the average or well below. And so a lot of districts are going to be, you know, having to expand their borders. And so, you know, Greenpoint, Williamsburg being split up, there's too many people there right now. And part of that is because there's been so much development in those areas. Those three assembly districts have had a lot of development, a lot of new residents. And it's an unfortunate fact of life.
Here, I fully agree. I do believe we've been joined by Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. A quick bio. I don't think it needs an introduction, but Congressman Hakeem Jeffries represents New York's 8th congressional district, serving his 5th term in Congress. He's been the chairperson of the House Democratic Caucus since 2018 and was selected by Speaker Pelosi to serve as one of the 7 House impeachment managers in the recent Senate trial of President Donald Trump. Congressman Jeffries, thank you so much for joining us at our meeting tonight.
Well, good evening, everyone. Tyler, thank you so much for that introduction. Good to see all of you, the IND family. Certainly great to see Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, who continues to do such a great job up in Albany, an institution where I once served, and that is the People's House for the state of New York. It's now my honor, of course, to serve in the People's House down in Washington, D.C., as we endeavor to defend our democracy and get things done for everyday Americans during these challenging but incredibly important times. I'm so thankful for what IND as an organization continues to represent in advancing progressive values, getting things done, supporting elected officials in our efforts at every level of government to deliver for the people that we are privileged to serve. Certainly has been my honor to have earned IND's endorsement in the past, and certainly it would be a great honor to earn your endorsement at this particular moment in time. Over the last year, and this of course marks the 1-year anniversary of President Biden's time in office, I think that he has not received appropriately the credit that he deserves for what has been accomplished. He, of course, inherited a complete and total disaster and was forced to take office in the midst and immediate aftermath of a violent insurrection with a former so-called twice impeached president who refused to confer upon him the peaceful transfer of power that every other president in America has received. Notwithstanding that fact, and in taking office in the midst of a pandemic, together with Democrats in the House and the Senate, and I've been honored to have been involved heavily in the effort, we were able to pass the American Rescue Plan, stand up a public health infrastructure to enable the American people to make it through this pandemic. When President Biden first took office, 2 million Americans were fully vaccinated. 1 year later, more than 200 million Americans are fully vaccinated, many of them boosted as well. It's one of the things that has enabled us to get through this difficult moment of the Omicron variant, highly infectious, but thankfully, because so many people have been vaccinated, not as deadly as what we have experienced before. We, of course, were able to distribute approximately 160 million direct payment survival checks of $1,400 to help people make it through the storm at that moment, stand up a massive program to provide rental assistance and homeowner assistance, and so many other things that were part of that American Rescue Plan, including making sure our state and local governments across America, blue states and red states, didn't collapse. And as a result of that, states like New York and beyond have a budget surplus into at least the more immediate out years, enabling people like Assemblywoman Joanne Simon and others to fight to provide everyday New Yorkers with the type of support and assistance they need in order to make it through the storm and continue to robustly pursue the American dream. Standing up state and local governments is not sexy. It didn't receive a lot of headlines, but what it does is enable public health, public safety, public transportation, public education, public housing, and the provision of the public good to be able to continue in as robust a way as possible. Of course, we were able to pass the bipartisan infrastructure agreement. It will create millions of good paying jobs here in New York and throughout the country, fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, airports, enable the mass transportation system to address some of the issues that they were confronting. A fare increase that was scheduled to go into effect has been halted as a result of the infrastructure agreement. Service cuts that were scheduled to go into effect halted as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure agreement. And as a result, we'll see some service enhancements. Those are a few of the highlights. There, of course, is work that needs to be done. Disappointed that while the House was able to pass the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, the Senate fell short because of an unwillingness to deal with a filibuster that is dripping in a racist history. Of course, it was brought to life largely to defend Jim Crow segregation. And while the work remains incomplete in that area in defense of our democracy, just like John Lewis and so many others who confronted obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, as John Lewis would say to us often when we had the privilege of serving with him, never let up, never give up, never give in, keep marching forward, get into some good trouble and change America. That's what IND has been all about. That's what we're all about as House Democrats. I'm honored to serve as the chair of the caucus and look forward to continuing to help this country do the best and be the best that it can be. So I'll yield back the balance of my time. Tyler, there, as we say in Washington, and look forward to any questions that folks may have.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for joining us and for those words. Steve, it looks like I think we'll have time for a few questions here. Steve, do you have your question?
I do. How are you, Congressman?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Good, good. Listen, I have a question regarding, I know you've been upfront about criminal justice reform. Have you considered approaching the Attorney General about changing some of the policies that are really holdover from the Trump DOJ, such as maybe the reinstatement of the Holder memo and the you're not requesting for mandatory minimums on every case? I mean, those things can be changed with just a pen from the Attorney General. Have you considered doing that? Because I have a whole host of things I can tell you about that I think can be changed at DOJ, and that would certainly affect terrible penalties that face really young men of color. Have you considered doing that?
Yes, we have. We have been involved in ongoing conversations with the Attorney General as well as his team as it relates to both criminal justice reform issues, as you've laid out. And I think they're moving in the right direction, and we'll see some positive things unfold. They've made some decisions recently that we support, including a continuation of the compassionate release policies that had been put in effect initially springing out of the First Step Act that I was involved in 2018, continued through the CARES Act during the pandemic. But there were some people who were released on home confinement facing the possibility of potentially being sent back. And the Attorney General called me directly to say, I received the advocacy from you and other members of the Judiciary Committee, Congressional Black Caucus. We're not sending anyone back. And I think there's a lot of work that can continue to be done. You've laid some of that out. Look forward to talking to you some more about some of your ideas. The one thing I will mention legislatively is that we did pass earlier this, or I guess at some point last year, the Equal Act, which will once and for all eliminate the disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine, which, as you know, was once 100 to 1. And no justification for that adverse impact on communities of color, particularly African-American men. And it has ruined a lot of lives. There are people who are still locked up on unjust sentences at this point, not 100 to 1, but at least 18 to 1. And we're going to take it to 1 to 1. Passed the House with over 350 votes. And people, if you can believe this or not, like Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz and that whole group, Louis Gohmert, supported it vocally. And so gives us some reason to be hopeful that even in the aftermath of Trump leaving office, there's still Republican support for criminal justice reform, and we're fighting right now to get it through the Senate.
Anytime you need my input, I'm there. I got some ideas for you. But good luck, and thank you, and thank you. Good work, sir.
Appreciate you.
Do you think it's because they're afraid they're going to be incarcerated soon?
It's interesting. I was confused a little bit, to tell you the truth, because when I was battling around criminal justice reform in Albany, the Republicans were dead set against doing anything as it relates to repealing the Rockefeller drug laws. We were ultimately able to get that done in, I think it was 2009 or 2010. And so I get to Washington, and there appears to be bipartisan support for criminal justice reform. I remember being involved in the early Judiciary Committee hearing, and someone from the Heritage Foundation was testifying, and it could have been someone from the NAACP or the ACLU, and I was very confused. And Joanne, I'm saying to myself, someone's trying to hustle me. Maybe it was because I'm from Brooklyn. What is the hustle here? I don't get it. But it turns out that, for a variety of different reasons, progressives come at this through reasons of social and economic and racial justice. But whether it's fiscal conservatives concluding that investing in mass incarceration is a waste of taxpayer dollars, whether it's the Christian conservatives who theologically believe in this concept of redemption and therefore reentry back into society, or whether it's the libertarians like a Rand Paul, who's very strong on criminal justice reform, disagree with him on almost everything else, but whose view is, well, we don't like government overreach, and we've been able to convince them that the one area where the government can really abuse its authority is if they can take away your life and your liberty through the criminal justice process. That's government overreach. And we've seen it in the form of overcriminalization and mass incarceration. And so they're there. And so it's authentically a robust coalition of the unusual suspects who've arrived at the same place through a different route, but I'll take it. And it's enabled us to make a lot of difference.
Sounds like something to be optimistic about in 2022. All right, we got time for one more quick question. Karen, looks like you have your hand up.
Hi, Congressman.
Hey, Karen, great to see you.
I know. Look, I'm so proud of you. You've blasted the Republicans for their opposition to the John Lewis Voting Rights Act amendment. You said some great things on the floor of the House. You said the right to vote is sacred, the right to vote is special. This is, and you pointed out, this is an epidemic of voter suppression. How do you see this going forward? Are we going to get there anytime soon? Do we have hope at the end of this tunnel for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act amendment or not?
It's a great question, and I have hope. And you know, the obstacles that we confront right now, and these are difficult times. We saw a violent insurrection. I was on the House floor when it was unfolding, and my Republican colleagues, for the most part, patriots like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger notwithstanding, instead of running toward democracy, ran away from democracy, and they've doubled and tripled down on voter suppression. But, you know, history tells us, as Dr. King prophetically reminded us, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. You look at his journey, the original Civil Rights Act included both the Voting Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act, but they couldn't get it through the legislative finish line in '64, so they made the strategic decision, take out the Voting Rights Act. That's why it wasn't part of the original Civil Rights Act. And then Selma happens, Bloody Sunday happens on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They seized the moment. Great to see former Assemblywoman Joan Millman. They seized the moment and they get the '65 Voting Rights Act done. And ultimately in 1968, get the Fair Housing Act done several years later. And so on these things, you can never give up because we're on the side of right and justice and truth and freedom. And I think, as President Biden indicated yesterday, we're gonna deal with the Electoral Count Act, which, you know, relates to this transfer of power, and the former president was trying to abuse it by encouraging Mike Pence effectively to nullify the results. You know, we want to clarify some ambiguities. The Republicans, perhaps for selfish reasons, have indicated that they're willing to do some things around the Electoral Count Reform Act. Perhaps they want to try to take their party back from Trump, and this may be a way to do it by preventing him from having the opportunity to try to steal another election. But for whatever the reason, they seem to be interested. Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy today said it's a worthwhile thing to try to see if we can get something bipartisan over the finish line. We, of course, don't need McCarthy in the House, but you do need 10 Republicans in the Senate. Joe Manchin has subsequently said that his conversations with Susan Collins give him reason to be optimistic that we'll be able to do the electoral count plus some voting rights protections as well as a first step toward where we need to go. And I'm certainly hopeful. I'll continue to speak out aggressively on this. The Republicans, you know, last point I'll make, the voting rights was a settled question for over 50 years when the original Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. Of course, it was signed into law by Democratic President LBJ, bipartisan majorities coming out of the House and the Senate. It was reauthorized 4 additional times. And each time the Voting Rights Act was reauthorized, it was signed into law by a Republican president after being passed by bipartisan majorities in the House and the Senate. 1970, Richard Nixon; 1975, Gerald Ford; 1982, Ronald Reagan; 2006, George W. Bush. So we've been asking the question, what happened? Was it the election of Barack Obama in 2008? What changed after 50 years of voting rights being a bipartisan settled question? And so we're hopeful that a handful of Republicans in the Senate will see their way forward to becoming themselves again. The Voting Rights Act reauthorization passed in 2006, 98-0. There are post office bills that are more controversial than a 98-0 Voting Rights Act reauthorization of 2006. 16 of those senators, including Susan Collins, are still here. You only need 10 of them to get something done. And so I remain optimistic that we'll make some progress, not all. And then we just need to get a couple of more Democratic senators in 2022, and we'll be able to do some more in terms of the filibuster thereafter.
Here's to hoping. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Up next, I'd like to thank her in advance for her patience. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. She has represented New York's 9th Congressional District since 2013. She co-chairs the Congressional Caribbean Caucus and is chair of the Homeland Security, Infrastructure Protection, and Innovation Subcommittee, and is the co-chair of the Medicare for All Caucus. Congresswoman Clarke, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to IND.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Tyler. Happy New Year to everyone. It's certainly my honor, my privilege to come before you once again seeking your support. IND has been with me from day one. At one point, I represented a significant portion of the IND catchment area with redistricting, not as much, but the values that this political organization holds are values that I hold very dear and that I have been a champion of in Washington, D.C. Let me say that I have risen in terms of my seniority in the House of Representatives, and that has provided me with many more leadership opportunities to advance the values, the issues, and the legislation that I know will have a deep impact in the 9th Congressional District, but also have an impact nationally. For example, I was charged by Speaker Nancy Pelosi to be on in a group of members who have advanced the American Citizenship Act, which is the 2021 version of comprehensive immigration reform. Our hope was to be able to get that into the Build Back Better package. This was a request coming directly from the White House, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We must do comprehensive immigration reform in our nation. And we're seeing how our lack of action in this space has really dashed so many dreams and have really had an adverse impact on our economy. And so I am pleased to be in that number to advance the American Citizenship Act. I've also, as was stated by Tyler, been charged with the responsibility of leading our nation's cybersecurity and infrastructure protection and innovation subcommittee in the House of Representatives. I have been engaged in everything tech. I just find it fascinating. And I also know that as our society progresses, technology is playing more of a crucial role in our daily lives and will be part of the solution to a number of the challenges we face, primarily in the space of climate change and renewable energies. And I have what I call a convergence, in that not only do I serve on the Homeland Security Committee, but I also serve on the Powerful Energy and Commerce Committee, where I sit on the subcommittee on technology and communications. And there we're dealing specifically with the private sector that is developing new technologies each and every day, trying to hold them accountable for protecting the American people, and also looking at new ways to innovate and to make sure that those innovations are not limited to any one sector of our civil society, but that there is equity baked into everything they do. And on that front, I've been charged by Chairman Frank Pallone to head up the working group on equity, diversity, and inclusion for the entire portfolio of the Energy and Commerce Committee. I co-chair that task force with Congresswoman Robin Kelly of Illinois. Well, you had an opportunity to hear from who I believe will be the next speaker of the House of Representatives, Congressman and Chairman Hakeem Jeffries. And he's given you a real lens into what we are facing in Washington, D.C. In this moment. We are trying to govern a nation with no partnership coming from the other side of the aisle. We've done some remarkable things, notwithstanding within the Biden-Harris administration, having passed the American Rescue Plan, having passed the bipartisan infrastructure plan, and a lot of the work that I've done in the Energy and Commerce Committee have been embedded in both the BIF, as we call it, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, as well as the Build Back Better Act. That the the Electric Vehicles for Underserved Communities Act, which is a bill that I authored, is a part of the Build Back Better bill. This bill is a major contributor in that it would essentially make sure that electric vehicle charging stations are not simply put into communities of wealth, but are distributed equitably throughout our nation. In addition to that, I've been very focused on renewable energy, and I've introduced a piece of legislation called the Renewable Energy Act, which would target 70% renewable energy introduction into the United States by the year 2030. And this bill has been co-sponsored by Congressman Peter Welch, and it is part of the clean energy standard that was included in the Build Back Better Act. And so, I'm excited about what the possibilities are for us moving forward. We have to retain the House of Representatives. We have to retain the Senate, and we have to push forward for greater majorities in both bodies. As you can see, the obstruction of the Republican Party is monumental in its scope. They believe in politics every day, all day, and unfortunately have given up on governance at all. It's really something I could have never imagined I'd witness or be a part of in my lifetime. The congressional regular order, as we call it, has really been disrupted by the Trump sycophants and their desire to essentially, seize power by any means necessary in order to pursue an agenda that would subordinate, I believe, communities of color, the most vulnerable in our society, people with disabilities. That's evident with what is taking place with respect to voting rights and the laws that are being passed state by state to disadvantage our democracy. Our democracy is robust. Our democracy is inclusive. We've demonstrated that time and time again with the election of President Barack Obama. I think they blew a gasket. And clearly, having done that, they are now at the point where they will do anything, including an insurrection, in order to maintain a grip on the power of our nation. We cannot allow or afford to have that happen. I'm happy to be in the fight. I believe I was born for a time like this. I'm a beneficiary of the civil rights movement, and I know the sacrifices that were made so that we could have a pluralistic society that reflected the best of who we are as a nation. With that, I'm going to yield back to you, Tyler, and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for that, Congresswoman Clark. If anyone has any questions, feel free to do a raise hand function. I have a quick question. I'm just wondering, what do you think is like people's biggest misconception, or what surprised you the most about current cybersecurity risks? This is something we deal with at work all the time. People trying to hack our, the government, the local government computers. There's a lot of data on there. I mean, is there something you think people? What's a tip? What can we do to keep our computer data safe?
It's called cyber hygiene. We need to get beyond just logging on and recognize that two-step authentication is critical to preserving, our personal information. The hackers, the bad actors out there, they expect those vulnerabilities coming from our society. We're seen as lazy as Americans in that we want to use technology. We are using technology. This is a part of our way of life, but we don't do everything we can to protect ourselves. And I don't think we've done enough in educating the public. And when you look at the multi-generational engagement with technology, some of us, were born at the time where we were just developing these technologies, and some of us were born into the actual application and use of the technologies. And some of us, we're still on flip phones. And so it's important that, we set a baseline of understanding among the American people about how to maintain cyber hygiene, because the weakest link in our society can open up a can of worms for some of the most destructive things that we can imagine through the weakness and vulnerabilities in cyber. I'll give you one example. You may have heard about the Colonial Pipeline disruption because it disrupted oil delivery throughout the southeast of the United States. Well, the folks who hacked into Colonial basically used an outdated password to get into their system. A password. Give me a break. So there's a lot that we need to do in terms of educating the public. I'm working very closely with the agency responsible for maintaining a robust public awareness campaign and protection, which is called CISA within the Department of Homeland Security, to really fund that type of initiative within the confines of their agency. They've got a lot of work to do. They're working with industry, they're working with state and local governments, because we're all vulnerable when we don't maintain a baseline of cyber hygiene.
Yeah, thank you so much. Alyssa, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, fellow Oberlin alum here.
Hey, OB.
Love it. So I'm actually super interested in all your good work from the net neutrality debate and the fights in 2017 and before. So I know we finally got rid of that bad commissioner and have some good folks in place. So can you just speak to the future of net neutrality in 2022 and beyond?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that question has been settled. We have a great commissioner at the FCC, and Jessica Rosenworcel, who gets it. She's doing some really innovative things at the FCC, including really helping to navigate us through this pandemic. We know that we've all had to quickly adopt a cyber lifestyle, as we're doing tonight on Zoom, but the cost of internet service and Wi-Fi service for so many families has been astronomical. We've established a program that provides a discount to families in need. And that was Jessica's doing. We supported her, we funded it, and we're still pressing on our ISPs to do better in terms of lowering the rate of cost. But I think the net neutrality is pretty much settled. That hasn't been a major conversation in some time. But you know, when you think it's settled, Republicans will always come back to slam you, so we have to stay vigilant.
Indeed. Vigilance, I think, key word for 2022. Are there any other questions for Congresswoman Clark? Yeah, Karen, quick one, please.
Hi, Congressman.
Good evening, Karen.
Okay, so IND wants to be involved in the midterm elections. We want to do phone banking. We want to do some buses. What's your take? What's your outlook on how our chances are? And you know, we're a club based in Brooklyn, New York, but we're a force of nature. Any ideas? Any suggestions on how we can be helpful to help make sure we keep you in?
Well, first of all, let me just thank you for you know, your past support. Like I said, you guys have been the wind beneath my wings, and I've never forgotten that. You know, you're embedded in my DNA at this stage. You know, there is a rumored opponent for my seat. I'm looking at the various filings with the FBC. There hasn't been a lot of activity in that space, but that's not always a true indicator. There was an opponent that I had in the previous election cycle named Isaiah James, who at one point was indicating that he would be challenging me for re-election. So of course, you know, getting the word out about my intention to run for re-election. We're always going to be phone banking. We're going to be working through pandemic conditions once again. So a lot of the assistance we need is going to be on the phones, word of mouth. And when we do have an opportunity to come together, having you know, validators coming from IND about the work and my commitment to progressive policy making and moving forward will be tremendous. The other thing I want to say is that, you know, we don't have districts yet. That's going to take a moment, I think, in our state. From the maps that I've seen of the 9th District of New York, both the Republican and Democratic map coming out of the Independent Redistricting Commission, there is not that much of a deviation on either map. Actually, they're both quite similar from the current configuration of the 9th District of New York. It's still a north-south running district in Central and South Brooklyn. So I feel really good about that. Those of you who reside in the 9th, you know, I'm gonna need your support. Certainly those of you who know folks who live in the 9th, you know, again, just reaching out to them. We really wanna have an emphatic win. What's great about New York State is that our primary is early. It's in June. I really want to encourage us to get out there into those swing states and help some of those colleagues to win their races. I'm thinking about Georgia in particular, where they are really under some horrendous voter suppression laws that have been passed by their state legislature. I'm supporting Lucy McBath, who will be running in a new district in Georgia. Of course, Raphael Warnock is also up for reelection because he was essentially replacing a member. So I mean, there are going to be a whole host of seats that we're going to be battling for in New York State. It's my understanding Max Rose running again. We don't know what that district will look like, but I think that he is in a great position to recapture that seat. So I know IND was with him in the last couple of times that he ran. I want to encourage you to support Max Rose. Once again, he was a great member and a very brave member. He stood, for the righteous cause. And that cost him his seat when, there was the backlash of the defund the police movement. So those are the things that I would suggest, Karen. I will certainly come back to you with some of the other areas of our state. I'm sure there's some Pennsylvania seats that we want to try to help secure. I think that, there's work to be done. There's an Ohio seat that's going to be open where Tim Ryan, who's running for Senate, represented. That's from my OB alum in Akron, Youngstown area. There's a brilliant woman who's going to be running for that seat. So we won't have a shortage of work for IND. I guarantee you that.
Lot to do in 2022.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks for answering all our questions.
Thank you for having me. And again, to everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong. We're going to get through this Omicron. And the idea is to come out the other side more robust, a stronger, united community, looking at the best of who we are as Americans, as opposed to this madness that we're being dragged through by Donald Trump. I can't wait till the select committee goes live. You guys tune in, because you're not going to believe what these people had schemed up for us as a nation. It's unbelievable. These are what you call real insurrectionists. And Benedict Arnold has nothing on these guys. Everyone, enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you,
Congresswoman.
Congresswoman.
Here now.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for coming. And just so everyone knows, just in the interest of full disclosure, we did make, I think, a good faith effort to reach out to the other candidate who's running in New York 9th. We were not successful, but just so you know, we did make an effort to reach out to all the candidates that we were aware of that were running in these seats, but we were not successful in making contact. So we do have one more guest tonight. Thank you so much for folks that have stayed, and Senator Parker, for your patience. Thank you for joining us. We're joined by State Senator Kevin Parker, who represents New York's 21st Senate District, including parts of East Flatbush, Midwood, Ditmas Park, Kensington, and Park Slope, Windsor Terrace too. Senator Parker was first elected in 2002 and is the chairman of the Committee on Energy and Telecommunications. Senator Parker, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to IND.
Yes, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. First of all, it's good to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. Looking forward to another very vibrant election season, and really hope to earn your endorsement and continue our work together.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, if there's a few things you could tell us about either your race or what you're planning on running on in this election cycle, and then maybe we have time for a few questions.
Yep, absolutely. So first of all, as you know, folks probably know, I am the chairman of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee in the New York State Senate, as well as the majority whip in the New York State Senate as well. I have right now what it seems to be is two opponents. One is a Democratic Socialist opponent, and one, a community resident. The Democratic Socialists, as you know, are well organized, well funded. They have national validators. So I'm taking the race very seriously. Working on raising money. Building up my campaign team, and, you know, being as present as I can in the community, always kind of being involved and letting folks know that I'm running for reelection. There's a lot of, I think, important issues at hand, which is why I'm running, for reelection. As the chair of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, I have been the lead on making sure we had a utility moratorium in the context of the pandemic. I have been making sure that we continue to address, all the important issues around arrears. There's probably about almost $4 billion worth of arrears in terms of utility bills. I know everybody's, concerned about rent, which they should be, but in addition to that, there's literally billions of dollars that New Yorkers owe utility companies, and that's including water, gas, electric, telephone, and internet. And so addressing those issues have been, I think, really, really important. As chair of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, I've obviously been really active on the issue of broadband. Quickly the pandemic revealed how poorly built out and how much we had to do around adoption of broadband around the city. I was very proud to have worked with Mayor Bill de Blasio on getting to a deal with Verizon that they would provide no cost internet in NYCHA across the city for families with children, which we think is critically important. And so there's a lot of work on that front I want to continue to do. And then obviously, having passed the CLCPA, I am the author of the CCIA, which is the Community and Climate Investment Act, which I think is kind of the next thing that we need to do from a climate change perspective in terms of addressing the issues, raising money and building out a economic base for the CARES economy. And so, some of, what I've been working on in the committee is a really, really quick snapshot. And then beyond that, I continue to be very, very active around the issue of police reform. After the murder of George Floyd, the state of New York was the first state in the entire country to pass a comprehensive set of legislative initiatives. We passed 10 bills. 4 of the bills were mine, including the 911 False Reporting Act. There was another bill that created a body camera program for state police, another which created an Office of Police Misconduct in the context of the Attorney General's office, and one that reaffirmed the right to record police activity. And so I've been very proud to pass that legislation. But there's so much more that needs to be done. I've written 15 additional bills, including the first bill in the state on qualified immunity, another bill that adds teeth to the Civil Complaint Review Board here in the city of New York, and another that has been endorsed by Letitia James around the issue of defining excessive use of force. And so again, there's so much that needs to be done in our communities, and I've enjoyed the work. Really looking forward to continue to serve in the legislature and make sure that as we come out of this pandemic, that we do so in a way that is equitable for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Senator Parker. Does anyone have any questions for the senator? I have one quick one I'll jump in on. I think I saw it either today or yesterday, I'm not sure, but I mean, I think you commented upon, and maybe your opponent has commented upon, sort of the trade-off between like natural gas as a bridge fuel versus a perhaps elevated cost for some of the low and moderate income constituents in your district and in New York. I mean, can you just talk about that trade-off a little bit and how you view that decision?
Yeah. Look, when we talk about energy, it's not just and we talk about the climate crisis. It's not as simple as stop burning fossil fuels and then start using sustainable energy, right? I've been one of the leaders on the issue of building a clean energy future in the state. We have the CLCPA, which is literally the most aggressive climate change goals of any state, including the federal government, frankly, in the entire country. That gets us to be net zero by 2050. So which means we have about 28 years to get there, which is not much time at all. And so, there's no need for us in this very moment to just snap our fingers and stop using gas. I think gas should be a bridge fuel. Again, our goal gets us there by, of reducing or not using gas at all. But I think that there's still going to be, again, the goal is a net zero goal, not an absolute zero goal. And so I think there's a lot of aspects in which we still may be using some limited gas. And I think there's a lot of, and not I think, there is a lot of technology coming out that actually uses natural gas without combusting it. Most notably is there's a Bloom, what they call Bloom technology. They actually use it at City Hall, where they use natural gas to produce electricity without burning it. And so I think we shouldn't be cutting off our nose to spite our face. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done around building out sustainable energy assets, like wind, like solar, more hydro assets, some cogen aspects, as well as hydrogen that needs to be built out. And those are the things that I've been focusing on as the chair of the committee. And so these fights about, not using certain things is really less of an issue. We talk to the people who are actually building sustainable energy assets. They're more concerned about how do you, in fact, get those assets sited. And I see my good friend Joan Millman on the phone. Hey, Joan, how's everything going? And again, both, Joan and Joanne Simon know how hard it is to cite things in the state, having been part of that process. And so, again, it's never as easy as, oh, let's just stop using gas. We have already passed the CLCPA. And so the idea of using fossil fuels, we already agree is not what our future should be. And right now, the question is, how do we create a transition that is safe, reliable, but also affordable?
Thank you so much. Sorry for the background noise on my end. There's some disagreement about bedtime here. Does anyone have any other questions for Senator Parker?
Sounds like you're losing.
Good night.
I have a question.
Yeah, Joanne.
Hi, how are you, Senator?
I'm doing well.
Good. I'm wondering, one of the things that I've been concerned about with energy and some of the legislation, and I think a challenge for us, and tell me what your thinking is, the CLCPA is, we haven't even started the regulations. We just issued a climate action plan. It's very clear. Even NYSERDA thinks we need $15 billion, et cetera. But we have, regulations that are yet to be written, and that public comment period. And we have zoning regulations that essentially don't deal with greenhouse gases at all in New York City. So that basically it virtually mandates in some cases fossil fuel connections, right, to connections to natural gas. There's a new bills that now are requiring electric buildings, but those are new buildings. So there's all of the building stock we have. And it seems to me that there's a real issue of sequencing and scope in the achievement of these goals, that these things are not necessarily on the same, linear path. You kind of go back and forth. And it's a challenge to, I think, communicate that. And, somebody commented earlier that we have like a lot of dirty energy here. Most of the energy in New York City is through fossil fuels, because we don't have Indian Point, and a lot of us didn't want to have Indian Point, but the reality is we are burning more fossil fuels to create electricity. So electricity per se isn't necessarily cleaner yet. In the downstate area, it's much cleaner upstate. So I don't know if you could comment on that or correct me where I'm wrong, or.
No, Joanne, I think that you were speaking to the same complexities that I was just speaking to, right? Which is that, a lot of like my opponents and a lot of folks who have come to this very recently think that this exercise around moving towards sustainable energy is simply about not using fossil fuels. It's a far more complicated than that, because you have to cite all of these projects, and our system for citing and that whole process was not built around sustainable energy, it was built around fossil fuels. And so there's a lot of work that we have to do. And I'm looking for partners in this work to change some of the regulations, to change some of the processes, and get people in place who know how to do this kind of work. Right. And so, like, you know, I was very, you know, we now have Rory Christian, first African-American head of the PSC. Right. I mean, that was a huge fight, and, you know, and the really fight came about because they were trying to put people on the PSC who literally weren't qualified and didn't have the background in terms of energy. And it was people like myself, you know, who you know, fought to make sure that we had somebody, not just a person of color, but then had somebody who really understood the process of dealing with and expanding, you know, sustainable energy. So, you know, one of the things I've been talking to folks about is how do we create a statewide standard on citing sustainable energy? How do we create a statewide standard around solar on homes so that you don't have a different, you know, set of regulations when you move from the Bronx to across the street in Yonkers to across the street in Mount Vernon? You know, all of it is too cumbersome. You know, I just had a bill vetoed by the governor that would have expanded access to community solar. And it just, you know, and we have a real fight because the folks in the administration don't really understand, you know, community solar. And you're going to need community solar on top of the utility scale projects, right? In addition to that, almost 10% of everything that we're going to do in the context of the CLCPA is going to be about demand response. And there's a whole like generational thing that we need to do, like many of us went through in the 70s, in terms of understanding conservation and understanding like when to wash your clothes and when's the best time to turn on lights or not use electricity. That has to be taught to people. And then a third area is you know, we have a 2.5 million vehicles across the state of New York that have to be either electric or alternative energy in the next 28 years. There's a lot of work, and we don't have enough charging stations in this moment, right? And we're still fighting about who can even sell electric cars, right? And then, you know, a fourth area is retrofitting old buildings. New York is an old state. We have old buildings, and we need to retrofit them. Like all of these pieces need to be done, and you're 100% right that there's no sense of sequencing or a linear path about how we achieve them. But that's also part of what we're trying to get, I think, done with the working groups. And so I've just been proud to be part of that process. And you and I should just certainly have more conversations about both legislation that we could be passing that get us to that goal, but then also ways that we can work with some of the agencies to change some of their regulations to make this process less complicated.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That's a whole lot of stuff that I did not know. So learning stuff here at IND. Thank you so much, Senator Parker, for joining us tonight. And I know you accommodated at least one, I think 2 schedule changes inflicted upon you from us. So thank you so much for bearing with us as the timing has moved around, and we really appreciate hearing from you.
No, it's been my pleasure, and hopefully we'll have more conversations as we go forward.
Indeed. Thank you so much.
All right.
So folks, that was I think a decently long meeting. We got a lot done. So that's the end of our guest list. We got our again, our officer nominations done, our e-board nominations done for now. If you are interested in serving on e-board and you did not get nominated, do please reach out. You can be nominated in February. I would just remind folks, please pay your dues. Please let us know if you do not receive a sample ballot next week and you think that you should, because that means we don't have your email or we don't have your dues payments. Does anyone else have anything? I'll say quick, anything real quick before we wrap up. I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, even more than normal.
Can I just say one thing that, you know, my office has given away like 1,000 test kits. And we are trying to get more because we were able to get rid of them pretty quickly. You know, we gave them out at, you know, public housing and had people sign up, and we gave them to senior centers, et cetera, and also masks. But we have extra masks, the KN95 masks, which Susanna picked up a couple of boxes of them from the borough president's office, which had them sent at one point from the governor's office. So we have a good deal of masks. And, I just want people to know that, if there's a struggle to get them, we just certainly are going to be distributing them and are happy to help people. Or if you have a group of people that you think need them, for example, that we can be helpful to, we certainly are happy to have that information as well so that we can follow through.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody needs masks. That's huge. So we will meet on January 27th. That's a week from today. And at that meeting, we will do our endorsement voting for not all of the candidates, but for the first half of the candidates that we've heard from. But after that, or other than that, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. If you insist. It's very good to see everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out. I know everyone has a long day and then you have a long meeting like this. And thank you so much. It's good to see everyone.
Thank you all. Great meeting. Good
Have a
night.
good rest of your night.